I don't think you can replace Drogba. You can buy top players, you can invest like Chelsea did, but Drogba, there is only one.
And if you're a centre-back and you look at the Chelsea team sheet and Drogba is right there, you're like, oh dear.
At his peak, Didier Drogba was a force of nature. He redefined what was expected of a centre-forward, bringing so much more to his game than goals. He was a high-energy, high-octane phenomenon who would go on to become a club legend at Chelsea and will go down as one of Africa's best-ever players. However, for all his ferocity on the field, he was a man of peace off it, and it took years for him to learn to dominate defenders. In fact, as a young part-time player at Ligue 2 club Le Mans, the late-blooming Drogba initially struggled to cope with the physical demands of playing and training. This was in part due to him having never been a part of a football academy or a real structured coaching setup throughout his childhood. His complicated family circumstances dictated otherwise. Born in the Ivorian capital of Abidjan, Drogba was always on the move during his formative years, splitting time living with his uncle in France as well as stints back in Abidjan. By the time he was 15, his parents had made a permanent move to France too, settling in the Parisian suburb of Antony. It was here that Drogba began taking football more seriously, impressing in the semi-professional low reaches of French football. For the teenage Drogba though, football still wasn't the sole driving force. He went to Le Mans to study accountancy at university, and consequently moved to play for the local club. His physical struggles left him still looking in on the world of professional football from the outside. It wasn't until he was 21 years old when he finally signed his first professional contract, and made his first team debut for Le Mans. He gained the hunger and desire in being made to force his way into the professional game through an unconventional route. It also meant he retained a certain rawness and grit that would serve him well as his career progressed. He may have been a late bloomer in footballing terms, but once he got going, he never looked back. In early 2002, he moved to Guingamp, initially helping the club to avoid relegation from the top flight. The following year, he fired them to an unprecedented 7th place finish, scoring 17 times and linking up well with another star in the making in Florent Malouda. Guingamp couldn't retain the up-and-coming Ivorian, and that summer he was on the move again, to Marseille. His stay in France's south coast would be an even shorter one. It was his part in Marseille's run to the UEFA Cup final, and the Champions League campaign that preceded it, that brought Drogba to wider attention. By the end of his first season with Marseille, Europe's biggest clubs began circling. Chelsea, in the dawning days of the Abramovich and Mourinho revolution, saw Drogba as the perfect man to lead the Chelsea attack, and believed he could get the best out of the attacking instincts of Frank Lampard.
I remember clearly Abramovich was asking me, who do you want for the striker? All the big names in Europe at that time, I told Drogba. And who is he? Where is he playing? Mr. Abramovich, pay and don't speak.
Drogba signed for the Blues in July 2004 for £24 million, but endured a stuttering start to his first Premier League season, with an injury keeping him out for a time. When he returned though, he was central to the team's march to the Premier League title, and he also scored an extra-time winner in the League Cup final win over Liverpool. His all-around contributions were enhanced by the fact that Drogba developed a helpful knack of scoring when it mattered most. Other than a couple of very productive goal-scoring seasons at Chelsea, he was never the most prolific of strikers, but on the big occasion, he was immense. Frank Lampard claimed that Drogba became a different man when the lights were at their brightest. He was like an animal, his preparation, the intensity in his eyes, and then he always produced. A second league title came the following season, but oddly, it wasn't until the year after that Drogba's goal-scoring feats really hit the mark. In 2006-07, he scored 33 goals in all competitions, which bested his tally for the previous 2 league-winning seasons combined. At this point, his clutch gene became undeniable. He scored both of Chelsea's goals in the League Cup final win over Arsenal, and the winning goal in the FA Cup final against Manchester United. But what of the Champions League, the true crown of club football? Well, in 2008, Drogba scored 2 goals in a 3-2 semi-final second leg victory at Stamford Bridge, sending Chelsea to their first Champions League final ever. For Drogba, what could have been his defining night became one to forget. In the rain of Moscow against Manchester United, Drogba was sent off minutes from the end of extra time for a petulant slap on Nemanja Vidic. In the ensuing penalty shootout, Drogba had initially been named to take Chelsea's 5th penalty, but in his absence, the Blues captain John Terry took his place, and the rest is history. Whispers of a departure from Chelsea swirled, but Drogba remained. It wasn't until the back end of the following campaign that Drogba would emerge from a lull in his lofty standards, but their Champions League would again be the scene for despair rather than joy. Having lost out rather controversially in a fiery semi-final with Barcelona, the already substituted Drogba was one of a number of players to confront the referee. He even had some words for those watching at home.
Man there trying to stop Drogba getting himself into further trouble.
Champions League redemption would eventually come to Drogba in 2012, again as the central figure in a decisive, dramatic contest on the greatest night in Chelsea history.
As possibly bleak as this. Drogba! They've pulled the rabbit out of the hat again. He's done it! The greatest night in the history of Chelsea Football Club. European champions.
But it had been a dramatic journey by that point. As if to re-emphasise his love of the big occasion, more FA Cup final goals came in 2009 and 2010, keeping up his record of having scored in all 6 English Cup finals he played in. In all, he scored 29 league goals in 2009-10, claiming a second Golden Boot in what was a phenomenal season for both club and player. This was peak Drogba. He had all of the interlinking, supreme team play that made him such an effective lone striker, but had married this to a truly prolific season in front of goal. As successful as he was for his club, he couldn't say the same for his national team. That's not to say he didn't have some incredible highs representing the Ivory Coast, and in many ways his service to his country would reach far beyond what he achieved on the pitch. But in spite of leading his side to within touching distance of glory, the silverware evaded him. But he did achieve something far more significant. Drogba was influential in bringing peace to a nation struggling after years of civil war had split the country apart. Upon sealing qualification for the 2006 World Cup, while the team's celebrations were being shown live back at home, he asked for the microphone, and this is what followed.
Le seul pays de l'Afrique qui a toutes ses richesses ne peut pas sombrer dans la guerre comme ça. S'il vous plaît, déposez tous les armes. Faites les élections, organisez les élections, et tout ira du mieux.
His plea was played on the national television for weeks, as its effect impacted those from the political elite to the oppressed rebels. A year later, he paraded his African Player of the Year award in the rebel stronghold of Bouake, before insisting that an AFCON qualifier against Madagascar should be moved from Abidjan to the rebel city, in a show of unity and reconciliation, celebrating the fact that peace had been restored just a few days earlier. A legend of a man, as well as a footballer, and always the first person his team or nation can rely on when it matters most.